Thank you, Niranjan, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great delight to be invited to this very important conference. And I agree with Niranjan that most of these activities are confined to Delhi. And Delhi, India is much bigger than Delhi. It's very important that we move out and involve people in other regions also. It's a very fascinating title. How should India promote democracy? I've been speaking for the last many years, but this is the first time I came across this subject. And when I looked at the concept note, I was very intrigued to hear 2-3 expressions that, India is a reluctant and hesitant promoter of democracy, is wary of open support, and the word democracy is missing from our foreign policy. It made me think whether it is true, because my own personal experience, but the last 10 years, is a bit different, and also confined to my own little sphere of election commission. But I would like to understand from Ambassador Neelam Dev whether it's true that foreign policy doesn't have this term at all in their interactions. But my understanding is that yes, perhaps we have been supporting the democratic world despite being a very poor country. Last few years, of course, we have improved economically, but there was a time when we ourselves were going around wanting fund and support. But even despite that, we have been supporting countries. For instance, Bhutan, their development was entirely dependent on India. Nepal, we have done enormous development work there. In Maldives, then to a lesser degree in Bangladesh, Afghanistan, of course, we have invested a lot. And of course, on all these, more details will come from Ambassador Deva, without doubt. Now, what can we do to promote democracy? I look at it 2 ways. One, best promotion is to set an example ourselves, how a democracy should be, how it should work, and we cannot have double standards. We cannot be promoting democracy elsewhere and be undemocratic ourselves. That's not on. That's not acceptable. And I would like to mention in this case a hypocrisy of the US. I remember when Palestine elections were held with great fanfare after many years of struggle, and when it threw up Hamas, they rejected the election. Later on, Egypt. After the Arab Spring, Egyptian elections were held. The election threw up people's will, Muslim Brotherhood. They rejected the election. Now they're happy to deal with dictatorships in the name of promoting democracy. When that kind of promotion, I think we are better off without. We should show by example. And then we should give a proactive support, and that also can be in 2 ways. Proactive support, one is the development support, development activities, about which I would not have much to say because I don't know very much. Ambassador Dev, of course, will give you much more. But the other is strengthen democracy in democratic countries. That is where we can play a very proactive role. And Election Commission, I'm very happy to tell you, has been doing it for the last at least 10 years, very, very actively. And I'll give you some of the statistics and some of our achievements. When I joined Election Commission in 2006, we had MOUs with about 6-7 election commissions in the neighborhood. Basically, exchange of experience, exchange of ideas, exchange of experts. And we were still a closed kind of an organization, very happy with our own activities, with ourselves, and we didn't want to open out. I thought that was not a good policy. We needed to open up and also share our enormous experience. So we got a great opportunity in 2010 when we completed 60 years of India's Election Commission, and we decided to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee of India's Election Commission. And on that occasion, we invited 35 chief election commissioners. We sent invitation to about 65 chief election commissioners of the world, and about 35, 36 came for a 2-3 day conference in January and before our Republic Day. It was so well attended in terms of participation, in terms of enthusiasm, and we had a 2-day session of experience sharing, and we realized that even small democracies have interesting ideas to contribute, and it was such a success that we decided that at the end of year-long celebrations, we'll repeat our performance. So on the valedictory function again, we invited them. That was 2011. Similarly, 60-70 countries invited, similarly 30-35 countries participated, some of them same, some new, and it was a very popular activity. Many commissioners suggested to us that India should become the hub, the focal point, the platform where they can meet every year, whether we could make it an annual feature. I was discussing, I made the mistake of mentioning it to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and in one line he dismissed it in a very gentle way. He said, Mr. Quraishi, you know, familiarity breeds contempt. In other words, holding these international meetings again and again, probably he has his wisdom, no doubt, but his one-liner was enough for us to drop the idea of making it an annual activity. Of course, we continued to do it on a smaller scale with our neighbor, the SAARC countries. So for every year on 25th of January, we invite them when we celebrate National Voters' Day. And I would like to mention National Voters' Day also has an interesting history. I had gone to Bhubaneswar, Niranjan's home turf, where I was talking to a civil society group. And somebody from the audience raised his hand. He said, 18 years is a special age which should be celebrated. I said, that's a very good statement. Let us think of a celebration. And we put together a team immediately led by Dr. Bhagwan Prakash, who is a very well-known person, and to come up with a scheme. And they came up with the idea of what is now known as National Voters' Day. Initially, New Voters' Day, Young Voters' Day, various combinations, names they tried, but National Voters' Day. Now, what was the concept? That everybody who becomes 18 on the date of eligibility of 1st of January, we identify them beforehand so that the moment they become eligible for that calendar year, 1st of January, we are ready with their electoral roll. This meeting was happening at the end of September. So we had October, November, December, 3 months. Immediately we got into the act and we started collecting information about these young people. Officially, we'll declare them voters only in the calendar year, but we were ready with the list. I wrote a letter to the Cabinet Secretary that we are going to celebrate 25th January, which happens to be our Founders' Day, by the way. Election Commission of India was founded a day before India was born as a republic. That was the importance given by the founders of the Constitution to the election process. The 6 articles about the Election Commission were promulgated 2 months before the main Constitution. So that importance in our mind, we thought that National Voters' Day on 25th January will be a great idea. I wrote a letter, Shakti, to Chandrasekhar, the Cabinet Secretary, that we are going to celebrate National Voters' Day, on which we will organize 8 lakh functions at the booth level to give these new voters their voter card. And please ask all ministries and all states to extend cooperation, the usual courtesy letter. After writing that letter, I forgot all about it. When we went ahead, continued with our activities, October, November, December, January, 19th of January, 6 days before our National Voters' Day, I got a call from Chandrasekhar. He happened to be my class fellow from college. He said, Quraishi, your letter, your proposal for National Voters' Day is coming before the cabinet today. The moment he used the word proposal to something I've already implemented, my heart sank. What if they reject it? So, and he said, you have two questions to answer. I said, what are they? He said, do you want a national holiday? And how much money do you want? Thank God I had great answers to give. I said, I don't want a holiday and I don't want a single rupee. He says, what are you saying? Are you mad? You said you are going to organize 8 lakh functions in the country and you say you don't want a rupee. I said, I don't want a single rupee. He says, what do you mean? What magic do you have? I said, my magic is very clear. Registering voters is my job anyway. I do it round the year. I'm just converting into an event which will create an impact with the same money which I have for the rest of the year. I'll use in a focused manner and we'll have National Voters Day. This must be the only proposal. You have worked with the Prime Minister Shakti. How much effort it takes for a cabinet memorandum. It goes to 20 ministries and goes to and fro, comments exchange. This must be the only proposal in the cabinet approved on an 11-line letter written because it was so simple. Now, when we celebrated it on 25th January 2011, the first National Voters Day, our Rashtrapati, Mrs. Pratibha Patil, she in her speech, she said her granddaughter had become 18 that day and how excited she was to become a voter. And in any case, we went ahead and we celebrated that. Some young voters, about 10 of them, were given voter card by the Rashtrapati. Now, many of these election commissioners came to us and wanting to know more details because it was fascinating. Such a huge activity with zero cost. They've never seen such a proposal. I'm very happy to tell you 7 countries of the world, to my knowledge, already have National Voters Day, including Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, South Korea, because the idea was so simple and so replicable. Now, this is how we are promoting democracy by example, by doing something which is worth emulating. Then, when we chose democracy in our new constitution, the Western world was aghast. They thought we have gone mad. With 84% illiteracy, with so much of poverty, 565 princely states, socially divided, suffering the throes of partition, how will they run democracy? Are they crazy? But we proved everybody wrong. Universal voting right was given from day one. Men and women were given absolutely equal rights. Now, you might say that what is the big deal? But if I ask you, you know how many years it took the United States to give equal voting rights to women? 144 years. How many years were taken by UK, the mother of modern democracy? 100 years. Even in France, 1944. In Switzerland, the absolute equal rights were given in 1971. And here was a poor country which gave voting rights from day one. In this background, when I'm asked again and again, why do you use EVM? When even America doesn't use EVM, even Europe don't use, doesn't mean that every good thing has to come from them. There are certain things we can teach them also. Then, the very first election was the biggest election in world history. And obviously, every election in India's election is the biggest election in world history. It only keeps getting bigger. Now, as a very quick look at the statistic, even Niranjan, who is an expert and one of the brightest scholars of democracy, when he said he compared India's biggest election, US, Canada, and half of European Union, is very off the mark. We have more voters than all 50 countries of Europe put together, and all 43 countries of North and South America put together, or 53 countries of Commonwealth put together, and all of them also become only 60% of India. We are 90 countries rolled into one. That is the size. And not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of complexities. Or anything which is happening in these 90 countries is happening in India somewhere or the other. Whether it is terrorism, militancy, tribal warfare, war, what you name it, we have it. And despite all that, we have been conducting elections very, very effectively. But it's not only a question of numbers. Our attention to detail, our attention to the last voter is so much. You know, we have a polling station which is 1,200 kilometers from India's mainland and only 200 kilometers from Indonesia. In the Andaman Nicobar Islands, there also we have to give as good an election as in Mumbai or in Connaught Place of Delhi. We have a polling station for a single voter in Gir forest of Gujarat. He's a temple priest. He lives there and he is a voter. He has to be respected for his right. So a polling party of 6 goes there a previous evening, sets up the polling station, waits for him the next day to come at a time of his choosing. Last time he came at 2 o'clock. So they waited and even after he had voted, we cannot pack up and go. Because theoretically, can you give me water? Somebody may come later and say that guy who came to you earlier was a bogus voter, I am the real voter. So there is a disputed vote there. And there is a legal procedure for what is called tendered vote. So we have to wait for him, wait for 5 o'clock with the rest of the country. We close the polling station. Now, this focus on just one voter is not just for effect. Around the same time, in my time, in Rajasthan, there was an election going on where one of the candidates was the president of the Congress party, Mr. C.P. Joshi. He lost by 1 vote. And when he was losing, he rang up the returning officer. He said, can you please recount the postal ballots, which were about 550, because there is no question of recount of the machine, because every time you recount the machine, it will give you the same result. So maybe there is a human error. So he says, all right, sir, 15, 20 minutes, he counted and same result. Then he called up a second time. He says, can you please retabulate the totals from these machines, which we do manually? Maybe there is a mistake. He says, all right, 15, 20 minutes, same result. He rang up the third time to thank this returning officer for obliging him and accepting all the requests, which is very important for credibility. Because if you don't oblige, they will always be suspect. Now, interesting sidelight here, his wife had not voted, Mr. C.P. Joshi. So, when I heard about it, so I was very curious and I rang up Mr. Joshi. I said, sir, this is what we hear. Is that correct? He says, yes, it's true. You know what happened was that day my wife and daughter had gone to a temple which is a little away and they missed it. Now for me, there are 3 lessons here. One, that every vote counts. Secondly, you can't take even your family for granted. Third, on the day of poll, the most important temple is the polling station. Now that's something which Netas have learned. Now, when one vote can make all the difference. In fact, Mr. Shakti Sinha was a private secretary to Mr. Vajpayee. Vajpayee government fell by 1 vote. But falling by 1 vote of national government is no big deal in the sense it is 1 out of 543 voters. Here we are talking of 1 vote difference in a canvas of 3 lakh voters or 15 lakh voters. And there have been instances when people have lost by 1 vote. And in fact, I don't know whether you will have the answer. Suppose there is a tie, then what will be the result? Any guess? I won't answer it because I'm going to promote my book to you just after this. Let me do it right now. So can you show me this book? Yeah. This is an undocumented wonder, the making of the great Indian election. All the anecdotes which I have mentioned, and they are only 1 out of 2,000, they're all here. So this will be a worthwhile investment in a commercial city. I've become commercial. Now, India is perhaps the most diverse country in the world. All major religions here, 22 official languages, 200 developed languages, geographically the diversity of all kinds, and their inclusivity of everyone becomes extremely important. Second thing I would like to say, India also is a country of minorities. Everybody is a minority here, including the Hindus. They may be 80% nationally, but are they not minority in Punjab, in Kashmir, in many states of the Northeast? So we have to cater to the minority. And which is the biggest minority, by the way? Quick answer. Women, 49%, and they have all kinds of discrimination, all kinds of problems, and we have to make sure that the election is very, very inclusive, and that is a full-fledged story. Now, The fact that we have been doing these elections and very commendably all these years, the world community is quite amazed how we are able to pull it off, election of this magnitude. Many countries have called us global guru. Hillary Clinton described India's election as gold standard. Now, you cannot extract these remarks from them. You have to actually earn it. So, vibrant democracy has been our abiding identity, and we have to be proud of this. Then, Election Commission of India is perhaps the most powerful election management body of the world. We have been conducting elections in the most difficult circumstances. How we have conducted election in Assam in the 80s, in Kashmir, in Manipur, in Nagaland, are stories in themselves. And even this year, the theme of Election Commission's voter education program, no voter to be left behind. I recently published, which is a compilation of 27 essays. Dhruv, can you please, young man, do me a favor? Now, this is the Great March of Democracy, 7 decades of India's election. This is a collection of 27 essays from very interesting people, which include 2-3 scholars from UK, Lord Bhikkhu Parekh, Professor Christoph Jaffalo from King's College London, Professor David Gilmartin. Then we have Ila Bhatt of Seva. We have Ratan Tata here. Then Yoginder Yadav, Mr. T.N. Session. And there is a chapter by T.N. Session, and there is a chapter on T.N. Session by Professor Christoph Jaffalo, Mark Tully, and a chapter by me also on voters' participation, how we set up voter education. Now, we are talking about promotion of democracy. I would like to mention one anecdote, and in 2-3 minutes I'll finish. When I have communication background, my PhD is in communication, role of communication and social marketing. So when I joined Election Commission in 2006, when I saw voter turnout in many places to be 25-30%, in places like Mumbai, in Hyderabad, in Varanasi, Amritsar, I said this is not acceptable and we must educate the voters. You know, my seniors turned down the proposal. They said, no. Educating voters is not our job. Our job is just to conduct and manage elections. I said, no, I refuse to accept that, because when the turnout is low and people get elected only with 10% vote, 90% have not voted for them, so their legitimacy comes into question. And it leads to very dangerous proposals like compulsory voting. Compulsion and democracy don't go together. On my dead body, I said, there's no question of compulsion. Your right to vote includes your right not to vote. And in fact, you will be curious to know the famous Nota judgment of the Supreme Court had come out with something very interesting. All these years, the case has gone to Supreme Court whether right to vote is a constitutional right. Supreme Court has repeatedly held that it is not a constitutional right. It is a statutory right. But in the Nota judgment, they say your right not to vote is your freedom of expression. It is your fundamental right. Right not to vote is a fundamental right. And then you talk of compulsion. And when they say compulsory voting, they always mention Australia, Singapore. Okay, we should learn from Australia and Singapore. Australia is the size of Haryana. And we added, do you know, between 2009 and 14 into 2 elections, we added 4 Australias to India. I asked my Australian counterpart he keep hearing about your model. How great is that model? How are you doing? He said, we are fed up. I said, why? He said, we have, for those who don't vote, have to pay a fine of $20. And to collect $20, we end up spending $2,000. And 2-3 years of litigation. I said, after all that, it must be 100%. After all, it is compulsory. He said, no, after all that, it is 90%. And do you know, when I was talking to him, Odisha, the Tripura election had just happened, and we had achieved 93.4% turnout. PRC, through voter education. Then we had told Singapore. Now, Singapore is of the size of Karol Bagh. No, we have to learn from Singapore. So anyway, we thought voter education is the key, and we set up voter education division. 2010 Bihar election was the first election with that. Highest ever turnout in history. More women voted than men, although adverse, the women's population is adverse. For 1,000 women, how many women are there? 940 now, but at that time there were 927. Their absolute numbers are less, yet they were coming out in larger numbers. They came out in larger numbers to vote. That was our achievement. 17 of our states women have voted in larger numbers than men, all because of our voter education. प्यार से समझा के motivate करके. In fact, interestingly, our very first campaign was in Delhi. उस ज़माने में एक song था, Pappu Can't Dance Sala. Remember? So since it was a craze and we were addressing the young people, so we adopted this slogan and उसको adopt किया. We created our own Pappu, who is smarter than that film ka Pappu, because he can dance, but his only problem is he doesn't vote. So उसको हमने lampoon करना था, तो हमने कहा कि Pappu doesn't vote. We can't say Sala because it is unparliamentary. We say so Pappu doesn't vote. Aha. So whatever Tukbandi, we went ahead and we did the campaign. After that, the same guys who used to sit in the drawing rooms and criticize the politician, ke sab neta chor hai, and I've never voted in my life. It was a fashion statement not to have voted. They were running for cover. They were showing their finger, marked finger, look, I voted, I'm not a Pappu. And by the way, when I say Pappu, I'm not making a political statement. Don't misunderstand me. Then finally, one or two, three things. We election commissioned around the same time. One is that when we did this Diamond Jubilee celebration, we set up an institute called India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, IIDEM. When this proposal was set up, we come across all kinds of hostility. Law Ministry at the top did its best to sabotage the idea. But we were also determined that we'll go ahead and do it, and they first refused to look at the proposal. We went to Finance Ministry, came back with 50 crores. We set it up in an improvised section of Election Commission's top floor. Election Commissioner of Kenya was visiting. He and I jointly inaugurated it in 2010. October 2010. Then we decided that we went for land with the money that I got. I went to the LG, Mr. Kapoor at that time. He gave me very kindly 5 acres of land from DDA within 20 days. Shakti, you have worked in government of Delhi. Getting land 5 acres from DDA in 20 days flat with the possession taken, we did it. Then we wanted to do the foundation ceremony. SARC heads of government meeting was taking place. The same ministry and minister sabotaged it, and Dr. Manmohan Singh was going to announce some concessions to us. He was going to announce 2 courses for SARC countries for election managers of 30 people each, twice for 15 days, twice. But he was told, they whispered into ear, sir, there is some legal problem. So he backed out. I said, doesn't matter, if you lost this opportunity, I'll do it myself. We all called a meeting of all the chief election commissioners of SARC countries and made this announcement. And interestingly, in the foundation stone, I wrote the names of all 8 chief election commissioners, those who were participating. My officers were opposing it. Sir, ये तो कभी नहीं होता, सिर्फ आप you are the CEC, आपका नाम काफी है. देखिए already election commission की building में उस वक्त के CEC का ही नाम ही तो लिखा है, आपका. मैंने कहा नहीं, I'm a student of history, like Shakti. इस foundation stone का मतलब ही ये था कि this is for good. जब 3,000-5,000 साल पहले जब दिल्ली dig होगी, तो उसमें वो पत्थर पे लिखा हुआ मिल जाएगा. So that is the whole concept of foundation stone. 8 चीफ का उनका नाम लिखा, प्लस मैंने एलजी को बुलाया because he was very kind. You know the speech, Madam, the speech which Chief Election Commissioner of Sri Lanka is still there, Mahinda Rajapaksa. He says, I'm in the civil service, in the public service of my country for the last 40 years. But nowhere in my country my name is written on any stone. And here you have given him, written my name on stone. Imagine, this is diplomacy, this is soft power. Now, when the law ministry was opposing it and sabotaging it, Dr. Manmohan Singh used to say, Quraishi, what you're doing is the use of soft power. That is soft diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to tell you in 5.5 years, we have trained election managers, top managers of 86 countries. Almost 90% of the democratic world. There is a beeline and all is still in the improvised top floor of the Election Commission. But our new complexes are about to come up. It's all almost ready. It's a very, very beautiful. We set up an organization of all 8 countries. Initially, it was called SAARC Association of Election Commission. Later on, the objection was raised, and we thought it was valid that it was good. SAARC is an official entity, whereas the election commissions are independent of the governments. So we decided that we'll have our own independent identity. So we renamed our association as FEMBOSA, Forum of Election Management Bodies of South Asia. And we have been meeting every year, and we have been cooperating. Yesterday when I was at the airport, I bumped into many election commissioners. 76 commissions are coming to observe our election from 17 countries this time. Although officially we don't allow observers, we don't want observers because we don't need any certification. Our certification is done by the people of India who trust our election. We call these guys election tourists. Come and see. If you want to learn from us, that's why we invite, because open doors. So, and which is working very well. We have MOUs with various international organizations who are involved in democracy. And since I'm confining myself only to feel good, there are some weaknesses in India's election system, but perhaps question and answer session will give me an opportunity to talk about it. Thank you very much.